So thank you everyone for coming to the latest machine learning for land modeling seminar. I'm John. I'll be hosting today, and it's my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Assistant Professor Sungmin O from Kangwon National University in South Korea. Sungmin's research focuses on the spatial temporal variability of land surface processes, in particular soil moisture. An essential focus of her recent work has been developing various deep learning models, methods for global gridded soil moisture datasets, and then investigating dynamics of flash droughts and cascading impacts on vegetation and ecosystems. Professor O holds a PhD in physics and meteorology from the University of Graz in Austria and has also worked at MPI Jena in Germany. Among some of Sungmin's notable achievements was being awarded the NRF Creative and Challenging Research-Based Support Grant. And just last year, actually in November, her research was selected as one of the top 50 excellent research achievements by the Korean Ministry of Education. Today, Sungmin will be giving us the seminar and telling us about some of the lessons learned from hydrological focus benchmarking and her research with machine learning. If you have any questions throughout, you can put them in the Q&A and we'll answer them at the end, or I'll put them to Sungmin. But as it is, please join me in welcoming Professor Sungmin O, and we'll let her take it away.
Thanks, John, for the introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sungmin O from Kangwon National University in Korea, and thank you for having me today. The title of this talk today, I felt quite broad, so I added a subtitle to clarify the focus from hydroclimatic robustness to observation-based soil moisture benchmarks. So using a few examples from my previous work, I want to make one simple point. In land modeling, good average performance is not enough. We also need robustness under changing hydroclimatic regimes. And I will make this point in three parts. First, robustness and soil moisture benchmarks, and then implications for ML4LM. This is the first part, performance of machine learning or deep learning under changing hydroclimatic conditions. And before getting into the main result, I want to make one distinction that I will use throughout the talk. So when I say process-based models, I mean models that explicitly encode process analysis, for instance, water balance. In this study, I specifically use physically based or conceptual models. On the other hand, data-driven models, I mean machine learning or deep learning-based models that can learn input-output relationships directly from training data. And for my study, I mainly use LSTM, long short-term memory, to build data-driven models. And also I want to mention that this data-driven modeling has a fairly long history in hydrology. So already in early 1990s, you can see there are some studies that shows the ANN or artificial neural network could show comparable performance to established process-based models. Also later, when deep learning became more active in the hydrology around late 2010s, the message was similar. The predictive performance of data-driven models is as good as, or sometimes even better than established process-based models. But at the time, our question in the study is if this is still valid under changing hydroclimatic conditions. So what we did in the study is that we collected runoff observations from the multiple catchments over Europe, and we tested three models like HTSL as a physically based model, and SWBM, or Simple Water Balance Model, as a conceptual model. And also we employ one LSTM model, data-driven model. And for each catchment, we have around 24 years observational time series. And then based on the annual rainfall, we select wettest year for each catchment. And we collect all these wettest years from all catchments to train or calibrate the models. And then we evaluate model performance over the remaining years, which are always drier than training years. And this is the main result. Now you are seeing the performance of HTS, physically based model. And we evaluate model performance using NSE, so higher means better performance. And x-axis, the first part here shows the wettest years. That means it's the training conditions. And along the x-axis, become drier and drier. So it's the contrasting conditions. And this solid line here is the median value across catchments. And the shaded area shows the interquartile. And as you can see here, for the physically based model, the performance is best under training conditions. And there are slight decline in performance when conditions become very different from the training. But the performance is still stable across the conditions compared to the other models you will see later. And second model, SWBM, or conceptual model in blue color, again, we found it shows the best performance at the training conditions, but the performance decreased rapidly, actually more faster than physically based model. Here, the point is that I'm not comparing the absolute performance of the models. I'm comparing the rate of decline. And third result in yellow color, you can see the performance of a data-driven model, or LSTM. And again, at the beginning, it shows quite good performance. But when the conditions become drier and drier, the performance drops faster than physics-based models. And also we found that the performance drop seems to accelerate once the contrast becomes large enough, like here in the red box. And this turning point corresponds to a shift in hydroclimatic regimes from energy-limited to water-limited environments. In other words, when the training and test domains belong to substantially different hydroclimatic regimes, the model performance degradation becomes much clearer. Also, we did one additional experiment, and here we trained LSTM again, but this time we didn't choose training year from the wettest year, but we chose one random year from each catchment. So the total amount of training data set is still same, but this time the diversity of training data become greater. And as you can see here in this dotted line, the LSTM now becomes much more stable across contrasting conditions. So our conclusion from this study was that for LSTM, or data-driven models, not only the amount or quantity of training data, but also the diversity of training conditions is very important for reliable generalization. So our main takeaways from this first study are these three. First, data-driven skill can decrease rapidly when there is a significant shift in hydroclimatic conditions. And second, the process-based structure remains valuable for robustness, which motivated hybrid approaches. And nowadays, hybrid modeling is actively studied, and there are already successful examples. And third, diverse training conditions improve generalization. and motivating benchmark-ready dataset. And for today, I want to focus especially on this third point because it directly motivated us to think more about benchmark-ready dataset across diverse hydroclimatic regimes. So for the second part, now I will introduce the soil moisture benchmark dataset. Benchmark datasets are already well known or well established concept in machine learning. For instance, datasets like MNIST or ImageNet, they provide clean and standardized datasets so we can do direct comparison among different machine learning or deep learning algorithms. And I feel during the last earth science is also moving toward benchmark-ready datasets. And this is the weather bench, one of the most famous benchmark dataset for data-driven weather forecasting. And as you can see here, using this data, you can compare the performance of physical models with a machine learning or hybrid models in terms of different variable forecasting across different lead times. And using this harmonized model benchmark dataset, the differences among the models become immediately visible. The first version of Weather Bench was released in 2020, and since then, there have been similar benchmark datasets, such as Climate Bench, or Rain Bench, or Water Bench. And from the data name, you can already guess what they provide. And for instance, AQ means air quality data, and also Caravan. They don't use benchmark in their paper. They don't say benchmark, but still they provide harmonized forcing data and runoff target observation data. So, and because of that, this data becomes one of the most widely used data sets for rainfall and runoff modeling. And one important point is that benchmark data sets are more than open data. For instance, in Korea, the government provides a lot of open or public data, but whenever I try to use that data for my modeling, it still takes substantial efforts to collect different variables from different sources and also clean them, like match units or formats, and harmonize them to use really for the modeling. So here, I'm really talking about developing benchmark data set. We also recently developed a soil moisture benchmark data set called SOMO Bench. And the SOMO Bench data here mainly built using in-situ data, in-situ soil moisture observations from ISMN, or International Soil Moisture Network. And in addition, we also included some the data from a network in South America. And the reason we include this South American network is shown in these figures in the bottom. So this is show the coverage of our data across different climate regimes. And we define climate regime using the long-term temperature and dryness of each grid pixel where we have in-situ data. And as you can see here in this green color, which means the South America network or data, they cover these relatively warm and arid regions, which couldn't be covered by only ISMN. Although we don't have we have less data in the deeper layers, like our data has 3 different layers. And for instance, we do not have very enough data for very arid or cold regions or for the deeper layers, but still we collect more than 1,000 pixels where we could make a target soil moisture data. And here I refer to grid cells, not the in situ data, because we upscaled our point level in situ data to the common resolution 0.25. And why we did that, the one main reason is when you compare the time series from the point level measurements, like here, this is the actual time series from the two randomly selected ISM and sensors. And you can see even though they are located in the same grid pixels, so they are very, very close, but still you can see there is a quite big difference in their absolute soil moisture. There is a quite big systematic biases among the networks or among the sensors. So what we did here is that using the long-term mean and standard deviation of ERA5 gridded soil moisture, we scale each point level data like here. So it has a same long-term mean and long-term mean, as you can see here in gray lines. And whenever there are more than 2 point data in the same grid pixel, we took the average of those for that grid pixel. So each grid pixel has one time series in our SOMObench dataset. And this figure here shows the example modeling experiment using SOMObench. So because it's the benchmark dataset, we provide both meteorological forcing from ERA5 and also observation-based soil moisture target, which we derived from the in situ networks. And here we tested different modeling configuration using different combinations of input informations. So for instance, we used climatology variables for here. And second modeling, we use atmospheric variables only as input data. And third one, we add forcing history information. And fourth one, we also try with some state variables, like skin temperature from the first layer or soil moisture from upper layers. And here, I will not go into the modeling details too much, because I'm not arguing. This point is that a data set like SOMObench allow us to systematically test how models behave under different training conditions and across different climate regimes. In other words, this type of benchmark data set make it possible to design controlled experiments to evaluate model robustness and generalization. So the main points from this second study: first, SOMObench provide observation-based and benchmark-ready soil moisture target. And second, this data can help us to do consistent comparison across models, inputs, or evaluation strategies. And lastly, because it is collected from the quasi-global scale across different hydroclimatic regimes, it can support testing the model generalization, not only average skill. Here, I want to briefly show how our data, SOMObench or soil moisture data, actually have been used. And the first example here is a global soil moisture data set called SOMO-ML. So here, using this SOMObench data, we trained the LSTM. And then with this trained model, we try to estimate the soil moisture where we don't have information, both in space and time. And right side here, you can see the final products, SOMO-ML, which is produced from this trained LSTM. And at the time, I was quite surprised because I thought our training data sets are quite sparse. For instance, we don't have enough data over South America or over Africa. But as you can see here, in the right side, the final product shows quite reasonable patterns on a global scale. And it was, I think it was thanks to mostly the data from the US America, because they actually cover quite large range of the climate regimes. And although there are some overestimated bias over Sahara, but still it shows quite reasonable patterns. And because it's from the observation-based target data and using the deep learning approach, so even though there are some global gridded data set, for instance, from reanalysis or from the satellite observations, we believe that this can provide some additional and independent reference that can complement existing data sets. And this is the second example where we use the SOMO bench data. So here, I want to show how observation-based data set can also help us understand a large-scale hydrological processes. So here, this study, we analyzed ET, evapotranspiration responses, during big drought events at the global scale. And not only the SOMO data, we also used observational data for ET. And although I didn't bring the result, but also we used the runoff data. So we used FluxCom for ET, and we use the GRUN for the runoff data. Both are derived from the machine learning models, which are trained with the in-situ observational data. And here we compare the spatial pattern of ET and anomalies during drought events. And this figure shows the result from observation-based machine learning data sets. And this figure right side shows the result from the physics-based land surface models from the trained ensemble. And in both maps, red color means a decrease in ET during the drought conditions. And as you can see here, in the physics-based model, ET almost always decreases during drought events. However, observation-based results show a more diverse response. In some regions, ET actually increase even during drought. For instance, this increasing pattern is appeared over the boreal forest, like here. And at the time, we thought like these regions are generally humid, so soil moisture can be still available even during drought periods. Or for instance, because they have more deep rooted trees, vegetation, there's water in deeper layer. So still they can do transpiration even during dry condition and contributed to ET increases. So as a result, ET can remain stable or even increase during drought events. And these patterns are not very well captured in physics-based land surface models. So the main messages from this part are, first, global benchmark data sets allow data-driven models to be trained under more diverse conditions, which can improve model generalization. And second, observation-based data sets can serve as independent references to evaluate physics-based model behavior. And lastly, benchmark data sets therefore matter not only for predictive skill, but also it can give us scientific insights. Okay, this is the last part of my talk. And beyond what we did already, I also want to share what we are working now with SOMO bench. So this figure shows one preliminary example. So using SOMO bench, we train a tree-based model, and then we weight to extremely dry samples during training. So basically, we use the same model, both for baseline and weighted, but we just modify loss function. So this weighted one can give more punishment when the model is not correct with extremely dry samples. And x-axis here shows the fraction of extreme samples retrained during training, and y-axis here shows the model error under extremely dry conditions. And compare with the blue line, the base model, the weighted training model performed better across these dry extreme cases. Although this is still very first result, but I think it shows how Quash global scale benchmark data set can support the evaluation of model robustness under extremes or out of domain conditions. Okay, so this is my final slide, and I will close with 3 brief reflections on benchmarking for ML4LM. So first, the benchmark data set enables systematic evaluation of data-driven approaches. And second, observation-based benchmarks particularly can provide independent constraints for model evaluation. And third, also I want to point out like robustness of the models under hydroclimatic shifts or extreme conditions remains an important challenge. So overall, my message is that benchmark data sets are valuable not only for model comparison, but also testing whether our models remain reliable when the environmental conditions change. Yeah, that's it. And thank you very much for your attention. I would be happy to take questions, and I would also welcome your comments and suggestions on robustness benchmarking of land modeling. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that really fascinating presentation, Sungmin. There's some really cool work there around, yeah, sort of the diversity within data sets. I know Suhail has a question, so I'll let him ask that. And everyone else, if you've got any questions, feel free to either raise your hand or post it in the Q&A.
Yeah, thank you very much, O, for this excellent presentation. Actually, I'm sorry, I cannot access the Q&A part, so I'm just trying to ask my question verbally here. So with regards to your first part, what about adding predictor that could reflect more the shift to the dry condition, like the water limited? Could this improve the ML model under the changing conditions? Like adding, I don't know, vegetation indices or something like that.
Yeah, nice point. And actually in the paper, in the discussion, we said exactly the same thing. Yeah, because we found the model performance decrease rapidly when the environment was changed, like from water limited to energy limited. And to calculate that, we used the long-term dryness index. So at the time, we thought if we add this aridity or dryness index into the model, maybe model could perform better across different conditions. But yeah, unfortunately, we didn't do actual experiment, but yeah, I thought exactly the same idea. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And my second one is related to the SOMO. I saw that in the tropic there are no observation, and how could we? I mean, there is no observation, so we cannot know whether it is good or bad. So, how would you think that you would have better value of the SOMO there?
Yeah, actually, if there's no data, I think it is hard to improve the model performance or even do some objective evaluation over those specific areas. Yeah, just one solution is really collect the data from that part. Probably there could be some local network because we just consider ISMN, But if like a South America case, if there is an opportunity to collect more data, I would be happy to include them, and probably we can significantly improve the quality of thermal bench.
Yeah, and my last question, and sorry for taking the time, is about the your last part, and I mean, is the lack of process there in the physical model, because you mentioned that there is no access to the deep water, so maybe adding the process of groundwater would help there, the physical model, but obviously adding the observation on the other hand is helping. So.
So we what I explained was kind of assumption, like why we could find increased pattern in ET in observations. And for the physics-based model, we didn't do detailed analysis, but still our guess was that probably, for instance, the vegetation-related processes are not very well simulated or very not structure represented in the models. And yeah, we thought the models do not well uh, simulate the relay and orientation of the relevant process could improve the performance of the physically based models, I think. Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, so I can't see any questions at the moment. I have one or two, if that's okay. So first of all, with your first piece of work where you tested with the training on the wet site and then predicting through to a drier, did you do that inverse, and were the results similar or different? Training on the driest and then predicting the wet.
Yeah, we did both simulations, and both results are in the paper, but I just brought the main results. And we found exactly same patterns, like a physically based model shows more stable performance and the others are less. And also this point, like when the conditions for the opposite simulation, it changes from water limited to energy limited condition. And again, we found that point, the shift point is where we see a faster decline in the model performances. Yeah, so we did both experiments. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, cool. I think it's really interesting that, it's hitting the the energy water limited transition period just from the data driven modeling. Another question I have is, so you're talking about how the diversity of training sets is really important. So if we have observations which often are sort of geographically biased and might not capture all the diversity, or might have excessive amount of observations from very similar areas like temperate zones in Europe, for instance, should we be removing some of the observations from around the mean to sort of falsely diversify our data set, or should we be replicating some of the diverse ones? Sort of, what's the best way to deal with this need for diversity, do you think? Just picking the training data nicely from what we have?
Very frankly, I don't know the answer, but I think that could be exactly the point where we can do some benchmark experiment or benchmark study, like using different models, and with that specific setup, what you mentioned, we can see like what could be better for different machine learning or deep learning algorithm. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you very much. I think, yeah, if no one else has any questions, then I think we can sort of call this to a close. I'd just like to thank Professor O on behalf of myself, the ML4LM team, and all the attendees. Thanks again for the great seminar. Really interesting work. We have a question. Excellent. We'll allow Johnny Wang to talk. So you can ask your question now if you'd like.
Thanks for the very interesting presentation. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Just very quick question because I came late. Sorry for this, and I didn't understand one or two small things. So in one of the figure show at the same site there are different values of a soil moisture at a different observational point. I didn't get it well. Is it due to different sensors used, or due to or we use the same sensor but different, but due to instrumental errors, or due to the location difference?
Okay, so I think you meant this slide, and these 2 points shows 2 different time series from 2 different sensors. And because they are within the same grid pixels, I'm arguing that they are quite close. So their difference is not due to the distance, mainly due to distance, but it is more due to the systematic biases between sensors. And it is already well known, especially for the soil moisture, like even the sensors are located closely each other due to the different sensor or due to the different network. They can have a very big differences in absolute term. Yeah, I hope this answers your question.
Well, thanks for the explanation. I'm not an expert in soil moisture observation. This is why I asked this simple question. Just for clarification, the soil moisture product that you produced covers the maybe 2 or 3 levels in soil to until which depth, please? Because I came late. Or if you would share your presentation later, it will be fun. It's just information question.
Yeah. Actually, here it says already, like we have 3 different layers. First one is a 0 to 10, and 10 to 30, and 30 to 5 centimeter depth.
Okay, great. Sorry for this.
No,
it's I hope that your publication will be accepted, and we can take a look more closely later. And thanks again.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks for your questions, Xiaoni. So yeah, we'll end it there then. Thanks again, Sungmin, for fielding the questions and giving the presentation. Oh, we've got another person. Matthias would like to ask a question. Do you want to ask it out loud? Yes, I can unmute you. There you go. You can unmute yourself and ask it.
Yes, thanks, Sungmin. Yes, I'm on the same thing, but I'm measuring also sometimes soil moisture, and so soil moisture can be very different because of soil heterogeneity, not because only of different sensors. Even we have the same sensor in a forest, and they are 20 meters apart, and we see differences of about 10 to 15 volume percent. So I wondered how often did it actually happen to have this 2 sensors at one point? Because by then putting everything on EC land or on ERA 5, the mean, isn't that introducing like, a model somehow? It's like a model, then it's not observation anymore. It's more like a mean model. So I was wondering, but if that's not happening very often, then it's not very important. But if that's like every second point, then I wonder about your choice doing the average towards error 5.
So first, we scaled our in situ data using ERA 5, no matter there are 1 or 2 sensors, so they can have a more the reasonable the mean or standard deviation across different the grid pixels. So in other words, it is true that our data is dependent on ERA 5 or modeled data in terms of long-term statistics. But the unique thing in our data, I would say, at least the daily variations are from the in situ data directly. That is different from the modeled data. And also, I didn't bring the figures here, but for instance, also we check actually within the grid pixels so much differences, we could differences that differences not become larger or smaller, depends on different climate regimes. And yeah, also we compare our data with ERA 5 at the daily scale to show this short time scale, we still have different values from the modeled data.
Mm-hmm. So then you actually have to also do comparisons on the variation rather than on absolute values. And so I can't say like I read all the papers, but it looks like that you also do like comparisons of the mean. So is that then a comparison more with ERA land than with observation based?
Yeah, I would say yes. If like this long-term, I cannot find slide, but yeah, like for instance, this shows the long-term mean over 20 years. Then yeah, I have to say these values are very similar to ERA 5. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. Very interesting. Thanks.
Thanks for the question.
We have another question from Jani.
Yes, just my last question, I hope. Because I didn't follow all the presentation, just wondering, have you compared the soil moisture the results from your product with those from the Gleam or other similar products?
If you mean this HOMO ML data, then yes. In the paper, we compare with the soil moisture from different approaches, including ERA 5 as a modeled data, also Gleam, and the ESA CCI satellite observations. So yes, we compare with other global scale gridded soil moisture data sets to show what is similar and what is different.
Thanks. We'll look forward to your paper.
Okay. Excellent. Well, in that case, I think we might have reached the end of the questions then. So yeah, thank you again, Sungmin. It was a really great presentation, and yeah, I'm definitely gonna go away and read all these papers that I haven't yet. And good luck with your one that's in prep. So thank you everyone, and we'll see you, I believe, next month for the next ML4LM seminar. So thank you, and have a good afternoon, evening, or morning, whatever the time is where you are. Thank you very much.
Thank you.